Hello, welcome back to Page and Perspective. In our last class, we had a discussion about the neoclassical period or the Augustan age, where we explored its basic introduction. In today's video, we are going to dive deeper into this period, focusing on its writers and their literary works and their careers. The neoclassical period is also known as the Age of Reason or the Augustan Age, lasted from 6060 to 1798. This era was characterized by an emphasis on order, logic, and rationality in literature. It was a time when writers sought inspiration from classical ideas, much like the way literature flourished in ancient Rome under Emperor Augustus. Because of this, the period was marked by a strong sense of decorum and the structure in literary works. The neoclassical period is divided into three major phases. The first phase is Restoration period, which began in 6060 and lasted until 1700. This was the time when John Dryden emerged as the dominant literary figure. His work played a crucial role in shaping the literary style of this period, particularly in poetry and drama. The second phase is known as the Augustan Age, which spanned from 1700 to 1745. This period was led by two of the greatest satirical writers in English literature, Alexander Pope and Jonathan Swift. Their works, filled with wit and sharp social criticism, reflected the intellectual spirit of the time. The final phase is called the Age of Sensibility, extended from 1745 to 1798. This period saw a shift in the literary style, with Samuel Johnson being the most prominent literary figure. His works were deeply influential, and during this time, early romantic tendencies also began to emerge, marking the transition to the next major literary movement. So, the neoclassical period was all about following rules, being logical, and keeping things balanced in literature. Writers of the time looked up to the Greek and Roman classics and believed that literature should be well structured, not too emotional. They liked order, clarity, decorum in their writing instead of wild imagination or personal feelings. Unlike the Renaissance, where writers focused on emotions and creativity, neoclassical writers valued reason and logic. They thought that people should understand life through clear thinking rather than feelings. One of the most interesting things about the period was use of satire and wit. Writers often made fun of society's problem in a clever and humorous way. A great example is Alexander Pope's The Rape of the Lock, where he takes a small event, someone cutting off a lady's lock of hair, and it turns into a grand, epic story to mock how people overreact to small things. In poetry, the most popular style was the heroic couplet, which means writing in a pairs of rhyming lines with a steady rhythm. Alexander Pope was famous for using this style to create smooth, witty, and well-structured poems. Writers in this period believed that literature should teach people how to behave. Their stories and the poems weren't just for fun, they were also meant to correct bad habits and guide people towards better morals. They often pointed out society's flaws and encouraged people to improve themselves. Alexander Pope Alexander Pope was an English poet and one of the most significant writers of the neoclassical period. He was born on 1688 in London into a Catholic family during at a time when Catholics faced many restrictions in England. Because of these limitations, he was not allowed to attend regular schools and had to educate himself by reading books at home. From an early age, Pope suffered from tuberculosis of the spine, a disease that left him weak and in pain for most of his life. This illness also affected his growth, and he remained quite short, standing at only 4 feet or 6 inches. Despite these challenges, he rose to become one of the most celebrated poets of his time, known for his sharp wit, mastery of heroic couplets, and his ability to use satire to critique society. Pope began writing poetry as a teenager, and his first major work, Pastorals, 1709, brought him recognition among literary circles. His real breakthrough came in 1711 with the publication of an essay on criticism, a poem that offered guidance to writers and literary critics. This work contained famous lines such as "To err is human, to forgive divine." It established Pope's reputation as a brilliant poet and thinker. One of the most famous works, The Rape of the Lock, 1712, revised in 1714, is a mock epic poem that humorously exaggerates a small social conflict where a man cut off a woman's lock of hair, turning it into a grand, dramatic event. This poem satirizes the vanity and superficial concern of upper class society, making it both entertaining and thought provoking. Pope also gained great success through his translation of Homer's Iliad and Odyssey between 1715 and 1726. These translations not only earned him fame but also brought him financial success, allowing him to become one of the first poets in England to make a living solely from writing. In 1728, he published The Dunciad, a scathing satirical poem that mocked bad writers and critics of this time, portraying them as a foolish and ignorant. Later in 1733 to 1734, he wrote an essay on man, a philosophical poem that explored the themes of God, human nature, and fate. One of its most famous lines, "Whatever is right," reflects the Pope's belief that everything is in the world happens for a reason, even if humans cannot always understand it.